We begin today the Gemara on the Avdalar Amar Aleph, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Okay, so the Gemara here before brought the pasuk that it says Asher Yarshion Elikim, and from this the Gemara says that Rabbi learns out that because Yarshion, this is speaking about actually the Bezdin, the judges, Yarshion Elihim, and Rabbi learns out from the pasuk that because it says Yarshion using a plural term, and it says twice Elihim in the pasuk. So we understand that there's Elohim and Elohim again, which is 4 judges. And then you can't have a Bezdin Shakal. You can't have a Bezdin which is even, so you have to add a 5th. So therefore Rabbi says, anytime you're judging, even money matters, you have to have 5 judges. But the Rabbanan, the Tan of our Mishnah in the beginning of the Masechta, says no, you only need 3 judges. And the Gemara explained over here, the Rabbanan Yarshi on Ksiv. According to them, you don't darshan the pasuk according to the way it's pronounced, which is like it's written with a vav, but it's really not written with a vav. So you pronounce it Yashi-on, which is in the singular term, and therefore they say that it says twice him, and that's 2 judges, and then you have a 3rd, which is in order that it shouldn't be an even bezdin. That's the machlokes. So now what comes out of here? What they're arguing about is when you have a word in the Torah that's spelled in the writing one way, but it's pronounced another way, how do we darshan the pasuk? How do we apply it? According to the way it's written, or according to the way it's pronounced? Exactly. So now, based on this, the Gemara is going to go through a long discussion. The whole plot is going to be focused on this, which is known in the lashon of the Gemara as Yesh Aim Lemikra, is the main way how we darshan the pasuk based on how we actually pronounce it, or Yesh Aim Lemeseiris, or is the main way how we darshan the psukim of the Torah according to the tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu how it's actually written. Dr. Gemara Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosi, or in another gersa bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi, Rabbi Yehuda ben Rayitz, Rabbi Shammai, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Akiva. Kulu, all of these Tanaim, Svirulahu, they all are of the opinion that Yesh Aim Lemikra, that the main way we darshan the psukim of the Torah is by the Mikra, the way we actually pronounce it. Even if the letters in the Torah don't have the letters that the way we pronounce it, but the way we pronounce it, that is how we darshan the psukim of the Torah. Says the Gemara.
Pronouncing is the vowels.
Yeah, exactly. The vowels and the kudus, yeah. Rabbi, so over here, Yashi-on, for example, is the example here. Rabbi Hoda Maran. Rabbi holds that you go by the way you pronounce it, because, like we just said, because even though on the pasuk it says Yashi-on without a vav, that's how it's written, but the way you're supposed to pronounce it is Yashi-on with a vav, and therefore you darshan it as a plural, and therefore you get to 5 judges, as the Gemara explained before. Now, Rabbi Yehuda ben Rayitz, where do you see Rabbi Yehuda ben Rayitz holds this as well? The Tanya, because we learned in the Braisa, Shalu Talmidim es Rabbi Yehuda ben Rayitz. Students ask their Rebbe, Rabbi Yehuda ben Rayitz, the following question. It says in the pasuk, by a woman that gives birth to a nekeva, a female. So the pasuk there says, Vim nekeva teiled, v'toma shvu'ayim kenidasa. That then she's tamei for 2 weeks. So now they asked him, Ekra ani shivim, because the word shvu'ayim is written without a vav. So maybe I should read it the way it's written, which is shivim, which would mean that this woman remains tamei for 70 days. So yachol tehei yuledes nekeva tamei shivim. Maybe a woman that gives birth to a female should be tamei for 70 days. Amar lahen, so he answered them, no, we don't say this. Why? Because timei v'tier bezachar. We find that the Torah says regarding a woman that gives birth to a zachar, to a male, that there's days of tumah, and there's also days of tara, right? That just like there's days of tumah by a zachar, actually for one week the woman is tamei. But then there's something else that's called demei tara. There's an amount of days. There are 33 days by a zachar. Any blood that the woman sees for the first 33 days after birth, don't make her tamei. So there's a concept of tumah by birth, and there's the concept of tara by birth, by a male, by a zachar. And similar, v'time v'tir ben nekeva. Also regarding a nekeva, there is the days that she's tamei, and then there's also the blood that she sees, that there's a certain period of time, which is actually 66 days, it's double of the zachar, that she's tahir. So therefore we compare them, we say as follows. Ma kashetir b'zachar, just like those days that the Torah says, that a zachar, after the woman gives birth to a zachar, and then there's the days where she sees blood that she's considered to be tahir. B'nekeva keflayim. So by nekeva it's double, because as I said, by a zachar it's 33 days. By a nekeva it's 66 days. Af geshetime bezachar. So too when the Torah says that a zachar, the woman that gives birth to a zachar is tamei, so that's for 1 week. So b'nekeva, by the nekeva, when she's tamei, kiflayim. She's tamei, also double of that 1 week of the zachar, which is 2 weeks. That's how we know to read it shivuayim, which is 2 weeks, and not shivim, not 70 days. Because we see by the tara, it's double of the zachar, so too by the tumah, it's double of the zachar, which is 2 weeks. That's the way he explained to them that we don't read it shivim. Now la'acha sheyatzu, after the students went out, so Yatza Machzach Reim, he went after them and he called them back to tell them, and Omar Lehen, he told his students, the truth is, you don't even need the proof that I just gave you. Rather, the proof is from the way you pronounce the word. Shavuayim karinan. Even though it says in the Torah, Shavuayim without a vav, and you can read it Shivim as 70, but we don't go by the way it's written, by the Messiah of the way it's written. We go by the Mikra, the way we're supposed to pronounce it, the vowels of the word. And therefore you read it Shavuayim, which means 2 weeks. V'yesh aim lemikra, and therefore you follow the main thing. The way you darshan is the way it's pronounced. So you see here, Rabbi Yehuda ben Rayitz, this is how you darshan the pasuk.
Why did he have to go after them and tell him? That was the kakasha by the.
Okay, so
very well.
So
why did he have to go back and tell him? Why?
So the Mefarshim speak about this. Why did he give him one shot, and then only later when they left, he came back and told them the simple answer? The Mefarshim talk about it. The Aruch Laner speaks about it. There's a little bit of a complicated pshat for this, but there's a pshat for it. That's Rabbi Yehuda ben Rayitz.
Why is there a whole shot to begin with? If
the Mikra or the Messiah.
Mikra and Messiah. They gave the Torah, gave it in a certain way.
No, true. But the question is, though, Legabe, of course, the
Mikra. Read it any way I want.
No. The way you read it is according to the Mikra, the way you're supposed to pronounce it. There's both. The Shaila, the Machlokes here is not which one is true and which one is false. There's a Mikra and there's a Messiah. They're both true. There's a way you write it and there's a way you pronounce it when you read it. But the Shaila is Legabe. No, they're not. The way you write it. No, but they're not. Again, when you write the word Shvuayim without the Vav, you write it Shin Veis Ayin Yud Mem. So the way it's written, if you would paskin al pi halacha, the way it's written, so then you would paskin as shivim. But the way you're supposed to pronounce it, though, is shvuayim. Now the shaila is lahalacha. When we take out halachas from the words and the psukim of the Torah, how are we supposed to take out the halachas? Are we supposed to take out the halachas of the lettering, the way it's written, or are we supposed to take out the halachas from the way we're supposed to pronounce it? That's the shaila. Benegay to the halachas that we take out of it. But of course, there's both. There's the Mikra and the Messiah. The question is, what's the aim? How do we use it as a mother, meaning to apply it lahalacha? That's the machlekes here. Now, Beishamai, another place, where do we see Beishamai holds that aim lemikra, that the main thing is the way you pronounce it? The Tanan, the Mishnah says as follows. This is a Mishnah Masechtas Zvachim regarding the blood that's sprayed on the Mizbeach. So Beishamai Yemerim, Beishamai say, Kol hanitanun al Mizbeach achitzain. Anytime you have to spray blood on the outside Mizbeach, and there are different karbanis. There's a oila, there's a shlomim, there's a karban osham. That's what he's talking about over here. These 3 kinds of karbanis. Shanastam b'matana achas. Even if you only spray the blood on the Mizbeach just one time, kiper. It atones and it's good enough. Even though these karbanis are karbanis that you're supposed to spray in the Mizbeach, shtayim shein arba, which means on 2 corners, which then spread to both sides, which ends up being like 4. That's lachatchila, the way you're supposed to spray the blood on the Mizbeach. But if you did it only once, it's good enough. B'chlal in Zvachim, by karbanis, there's a lot of things that it says in the Torah that should be done, but they're not ma'akiv. It's not a must, even if it's only for the mitzvah, the way you should do it. But even if you don't do it, it's good enough. So over here he's saying by all karbanis, just one time spraying the blood on the Mizbeach, b'diavad is good enough. Shanamba, because the pasuk says, V'dam zvachecha yishafech. So the Torah uses this expression of dam zvachecha yishafech. That means that just one shvicha, one time you pour it is good enough.
One corner?
Yeah, one corner, wherever it is on the Mizbeach. Now, b'chatos. However, Beishamai says by the chatos it's different. Shtei matones. By a chatos there has to be a minimum of 2 that you have to put it on the mizbeach. Now the chatos b'chlal is different than these other karbanos I just mentioned, the oila, shlomim, and the osham, because the chatos, it's the way it's supposed to be done. L'chatchil is not shtayim shein arba on 2 corners that spreads to 4. By the karban chatos, you're supposed to spray the blood on each one of the 4 corners separately. So by the chatos, Beishamai says, so the mitzvah is to do it on each one of the 4 corners. But if you do it only on 2 of the corners, it's good enough. Beis Hillel say, Af b'chatos shenastam b'matana achas kiper. By a chatos we also say the same thing. That just one time spraying on the mizbeach will atone, it's good enough. Now, what's the basis of their machlekes? Rav Huna said, "My time at the Beishamai." What's the basis of Beishamai's opinion? Because by the karbanis, it says karnos, and these are by karbanis chatos actually, because that's the whole machlekes of Beishamai Beisilo regarding a chatos. So by chatos, it says 3 times karnos, karnos, karnos. Okay, the Rashi brings there by the karban chatos of a nasi, then by the karban chatos of an ordinary person. There's one time if he's bringing a lamb, another time if he's bringing a goat. It says 3 times. Now, each one of these 3 times, if you go by the way you pronounce the word, karnois, plural, so then arekan sheish. It's actually telling you that you have to spray the blood on 6 corners of the mizbeach. Now, there are no 6 corners on the mizbeach, so what does this mean? Therefore, Beishamai darshans, arba lemitzvah. 4 of the times, 4 of the corners that's the mitzvah, l'chatchila, the way the blood should be sprayed on the mizbeach. Now, the other 2 times, ushtayim, it's coming to tell you la'akev. The 2 are a must. So therefore, Beishamai says, from here I see that by the karban chatos, 2 is a must. It can't be 1 like other karbanis.
Yeah, two is a must because you're hitting the edge or the corner, which automatically.
I don't know if it's about spreading out. Lav dafke. By other karbanis, the main point is about the fact that it spreads out, not by the chatos. By the chatos, if you spray in the mizbeach 2 times, then that's what's ma'akiv, because you have over here.
No, time doesn't mean 1 corner on both sides.
No. 2 times exactly. Two times that you're spraying. That's ma'akiv exactly. But what is this based on? This is based on the fact that we read karnois 3 times in a plural term. Now it doesn't actually say in the pasuk with a vav, karnois. That's the way you pronounce it. So Beishamai is going by the way you pronounce the word. But in Beisilo say that it says in the pasuk karnois. 1 time it says with a vav, but then it says karnois, and the other 2 times you read it, you pronounce it with like it's written with a vav, but it doesn't say it that way. It says karnas, which is a singular term. So if you go by the way it's written without a vav, arekan arba, so you only have 4 times. Once plural and another 2 times singular. So you only have 4 times that the Torah is saying that you should spray in the corners of the mizbeach. So therefore, Beisilo that he says, Gimel mitzvah, the pasuk is saying that 3 times is a mitzvah that you should not only spray 1, but you should also do the additional 3 times, a total of 4 times. Va'achas la'akiv. And one of the times, that's ma'akiv. You don't have that extra 2 times that Beishamai had to say that it's ma'akiv to do 2 times. Only 1 time is ma'akiv. But the Gemara asks on the drasha according to Beis Hillel, mitzvah. Maybe I should say that since according to Beis Hillel, it says in the pasuk that you should spray it on 4 corners of the mizbeach. Maybe all 4 corners is something which is just l'chatchila for the mitzvah. And even if you don't maybe spray even 1 time, it should be mechaper. According to Beishamai, you had 6 times. So 2 are extra. So therefore you have 2 to say that those 2 are ma'akiv. But according to Beis Hillel, it says only 4 corners. So 4 corners. It says in the Torah 1 time to spray on 4 corners. Maybe it's just saying, l'chatchila, it's a mitzvah to spray on 4 corners. But even if you don't spray at all, maybe it would be a kapara as well. So the Gemara says you can't say that because kapara b'chdi lo yashkechan. We never find that there should be a kapara without spraying any blood on the mizbeach. So therefore, at least 1 time is definitely going to be ma'akiv according to Beis Hillel. Okay, so what do you see here? What's the machlekes of Beishamai and Beis Hillel? Do you dash in the pasuk by the way you pronounce it, karnois 3 times loshen rabim, or do you do you dash in the pasuk that is not by the way you pronounce it, but the way it's written, and twice it says karnas loshen yachid. Rab Shimon, where do we see Rab Shimon holds it? You go by the way you pronounce the word, Eshem lemikra. The Tanya, the Braisa says, and this is regarding the sukkah, that shtayim kol chasan, the minimum amount of walls for a sukkah, you have to have 2 whole walls, and then a shlish is the 3rd wall of full tefach. You have a 3rd wall, even if it's just 1 tefach, that's enough for the walls of a sukkah. Rab Shimon Aimer, however, Rab Shimon says, shalish kol chasan, you have to have 3 full walls. And a revius, and then the 4th wall of full tefach. It doesn't have to be a full wall, it could be just a tefach of a wall. So b'mai kamiflagi, what's the basis of their machlekes? So again, the same thing. Rabbanan Savri Yeshem l'Mesayres. Rabbanan hold that the main way you dash in the pasuk is by the Mesayre, by the tradition of the way it's actually written. But Rab Shimon says Yeshem l'Mikra. You dash in the pasuk by the way it's pronounced. And the Gemara explains Rabbanan Savri Yeshem l'Mesayres. You go by the way it's actually written. Now in the pasuk where it speaks about sukkah, it says 3 times: basukais, basukais, and basukais. Now, as you see, the first 2 times it says basukais without a vav. So then, if you just go by the way it's written, so then it's basukas, and basukais. So arekan arba. So you have over here 4 times, because the first 2 times it's singular, and then the last time it's plural. So that's four different times that it says here, basukais. What do I learn out from this? So first of all, dal chad kra, the first basukas you can take out because lagufe. That's not extra to darshan regarding the number of walls. That word basukas is just coming to tell you about the main mitzvah, that you have to sit in the sukkah. So now the other 2 times are extra. So pashulu tlas. So you have over here a source for 3 walls, because it says basukah singular, and then it says basukah is lashon rabim, so that's the 3 walls. Now asoy hilchase. So why is the 3rd wall enough if it's only a tefach? Because there's a halacha l'moshe misinai, and the halacha l'moshe misinai comes and tells you garasa l'shlishis. It minimizes the requirement of the 3rd wall vayikimta tefach, and it tells you that it's enough to have a tefach of the 3rd wall. That's according to the Rabbanan, that darshan according to the way the pasuk is actually written. However, Rab Shimon Sovar, Rab Shimon holds that you darshan according to the way it's pronounced, and therefore we read it and we pronounce it actually and say basukais, basukais, basukais. That you have the 3 times that it says there in the pasuk. So each one is plural. So that's a total arekan sheish. That's 6 walls that you would need if you were going to darshan everything. Now dal chad kra legufe. The first basukah you can take off, because that word is used for the mitzvah itself, to sit in the sukkah. So now pashalu arba. So you're left with the other 2 times that it says basukah, is that we go by both of them according to the plural, the way it's pronounced. So that's 4 walls. And then asoy hilchase garasa l'revius halach l'moshe misinai minimizes the requirement of the 4th wall vekimta tefach, and you only need a tefach for the 4th wall. So here you see Rab Shimon holds that you darshan the pasuk by the way it's pronounced, not by the way it's written. The next opinion.
The sheet of Kriya Ksiv.
Yeah.
When a Tana mentions it, it's consistent. That's the sheet.
Yeah, absolutely.
He goes by
correct.
Kriya, the other one goes
correct.
by Ksiv.
Okay. Yeah. Now the last Tana here is Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, where do we see that he holds it? You go by the mikra, that is the way it's pronounced. The Tanya and the Braisa, it says Rabbi Akiva says Minayin l'revius dam sheyotza mishnei mesim. If there's just a revius of blood that is combined, this revius is from 2 different people that died. Shemetame ba'oil. How do I know that this revius will be a tumah for this when it's inside an oil? As we know, by a mace, there's a tumah if you touch or if you carry, but there's also a tumah if you're under a roof in an oil. So the minimum amount of blood of a mace that causes tumah is a revius aloig of blood. How do you know if that revius came from 2 mesim that it'll also cause the tumah inside of an oil? Shenem, because the pasuk says, "Al kol nafshos meis lo yovai." So the word nafshos is pronounced as plural. So nafshos refers to the blood, and a revius. Rashi brings that the minimum amount of blood that a person needs to live is a revius. So it says nafshos, the life, the blood, and it uses a plural term. Nafshos of 2 mesim lo yavai, and that refers to not being in a tent together with it, and you will become tameh. Shtei nefashos. So because we read it as and we pronounce it as plural, so that means the blood of 2 nefashos. And b'shir echad, and it says meis lashon yachid. So meis means the shear of one person that is alive by the blood, which is 1 revius. So therefore, from here we learn nafshos lashon rabim, meis lashon yachid. So we say the revius of 1 revius of blood that's combined from 2 people that died will cause tumah. But Rabbanan say we go by the way it's written. Nafshas ksiv. It says it without a vav. So we follow the way it's written, and therefore it has to be the revius of blood from 1 person in order to cause tumah. So here we see all these Tanaim that hold of the union of Yeshem Lemikra, and what we actually also see is that it's only these Tanaim. But everybody else, in all of these cases, we see that the Rabbanan always disagreed with this. And they say that you darshan the pasuk by the way it's written, not by the way it's pronounced. So now the Gemara is going to challenge this. Is this really true that it's only these Tanaim that hold Yeshem Lemikra? Maskef Larav Acha Bar Yaakov, Mi Yeked the Lesla Yeshem Lemikra. Is it possible that there's anybody that holds that you don't follow the way it's pronounced? But Vatanya, there's a brayso that says regarding the Isser of Basa B'cholov, not eat or cook milk with meat. It says in the pasuk B'chalev Imay, that don't cook the meat with the mother's milk. Now, how do you read the B'chalev? Yachad, I would think maybe instead of pronouncing it B'chalev or B'chalav Imay with the milk of the mother, maybe B'chalev. Pronounce it as with the fats. That don't cook the meat together with the fats of the animal. How do you know B'chlal the whole that it's referring to milk? So Amrit, so you answer for this, what's the reason we know that it's milk? Yeshem Lemikra, because we know this is how we have to pronounce it. So we follow the way you pronounce the word, not the way it's written. The way it's written, you can read it as chaylev. So over here, we see that everybody holds that the source for the Isser of Basa B'chalav is based on the way you pronounce it. So how can you say that all these Chachamim, the Rabbanan here, agreed with these Tanaim and say that you follow the way it's written? If you're going to follow the way it's written, we don't have a source for the Isser of Basa B'chalav. It could be Chelev. So therefore, Ella, the Gemara says, the Kula Alma. So because of this question, the Gemara now attempts to say that everybody agrees, Yesh Eim LeMikra, that you do follow the words in the psukim of the Torah the way it's pronounced, not the way it's written. So now here the Gemara is going to go over again all the arguments that we just brought, and we explain them based on saying that they're arguing about Yesh Eim LeMikra or Yesh Eim LeMesayres. Now the Gemara is going to go all over again to explain, no, there's another point that they're arguing about. So now, no, the Mikra is Chalev or Chalav. The Mikra refers to how you pronounce it. So the pronunciation is Chalav, milk. So now, V'Rebbi v'Rabbanan, going back to the argument about Yarshion, when it says in the Torah, it says once Elohim, and then it says again Elohim, and then it says Yarshion using a plural term. So what do we say? Does this mean that you have to have 4 judges and then add a 5th in order that it shouldn't be even? Or does this mean 2 judges and then you add a 3rd? So the explanation is not whether you go by the Mikra or Messiris, but there's another explanation for this machlokes. Bahal kamiflagi, this is what they're arguing about. Rebbe says, Yarshion Elohim Achrini. The reason why it says a plural term here, Yarshion, is because it's referring to the word Elohim that it says here, and the word Elohim that it also says earlier in the pasuk, and therefore it's saying 2 over here and 2 before, and that's the plural term of the pasuk that it goes on both of them, and therefore you have to have 4 judges and then add a 5th, that it shouldn't be even. That's according to Rebbe. But Rabbanan Savri, however, Rabbanan's opinion is Yarshion. The reason it says a plural term of Yarshion is because the ha'eich or the hai, since it says twice Elohim in the pasuk, the plural term over here is going on both Elohims. If it would be only one Elohim, it wouldn't say a plural term of Yarshion. The plural term of Yarshion is going on one and the other time of Elohim, which means 2 judges, and then you have to add a 3rd that it shouldn't be even. That's the machlokes according to Rebbe and the Rabbanan over here. They're not arguing about whether you read it Yarshion without a vav or with a vav. Everybody agrees you read it plural. But the question is plural of what? Plural of the fact that it says twice Elohim, or plural of the fact that it says Elohim and Elohim, meaning 2 and 2. That's why it says Elohim, and therefore it would be 4 and then 5. Okay, that's the machlokes between Rebbe and the Rabbanan. Now, but Rabbi Yehuda ben Rayetz, when Rabbi Yehuda ben Rayetz had a discussion with his students regarding the tumah of a woman that gave birth to an akeva, so the Gemara says, the Rabbanan, his students didn't argue with him. When he explained them this, that you go by the way you pronounce it, they accepted it. So nobody argues in him. Now, Beis Hillel, when it comes to Beis Hillel, so the Gemara before explained that the argument between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai was based on the word karnais that it said 3 times. Do you read it karnais with a vav or karnais without a vav? Now the Gemara says, no, actually Beis Hillel's opinion is based on something else. When Beis Hillel says that even for carbon chatos, it's enough if you spray the blood in the mizbeach once. What's Beis Hillel's source? The Tanya, because there's another brayso that says that by the carbon chatos it says 3 times v'chiper, 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 and these are extra words. Why does it say these 3 times? And so the brayso here says mipnei hadin, because of a drasha, because of a kal v'chaimer that I could make myself. So therefore the pasuk has to come and clarify what the halacha is, and the Gemara here will explain what the kal v'chaimer is and what the drasha I could make myself, and why the pasuk has to clarify. Now, v'haloi dinu, I have the following kal v'chaimer, or the following limud I could learn out. Nemar domim lamata. It says in the Torah regarding spraying the blood lamata, below, and v'nemar domim lamayla. It speaks in the Torah about spraying the blood above. So there's different pshatim Rashi has here, but the pshat that Rashi accepts is that when it says domim lamata, it's referring to the oila, the shlomim, and the osham. Their blood is sprayed on the bottom part of the mizbeach. The mizbeach had 2 parts, the top part and the bottom part, which was divided by a chuta sikra, by a line across. So there's the domim that's sprayed below that line, and then there's the blood of the chatos that's sprayed above that line. So now, madom mamuram lamato, just like the blood that's sprayed below the line, shenosnam b'matana achas, that if you spray it only once, kiper, it atones, it's enough, and that everybody agrees too, that one time b'diavad is enough. Av dom mamuram lamaylo. So too regarding the chatos, even though it's sprayed above the line, shenosnam b'matana achas, I compare and say that even if it's sprayed just once, kiper, then it'll atone for. That's one way I could compare. Oh, the brayso goes on to say, or maybe I could compare regarding the carbon chatos and say different. Klach lederech zu, go to an opposite direction and say as follows: Nem adam b'chutz The Torah speaks about spraying the blood on the Mizbeach, on the outside Mizbeach, by the Karban Chatas that's brought on the outside, V'nem Adamim Bifnim. And it also speaks about a Karban Chatas. There is a Karban Chatas that the blood of this carbon is supposed to be taken inside the Heichal, and it's sprayed on the inside Mizbeach. Now, maybe I could compare and say, Ma Damim Ma'amurim Bifnim, just like the blood that's sprayed on the inside Mizbeach, there the halacha is, Chiser Achas Mimatanais, if you're just missing even one of the times that you're supposed to spray it, Lo Yasav Alei Klum. Everything you did is worthless. You have to have all the times it has to be sprayed. So I could compare and say, Avdam Ma'amurim B'chutz, so too regarding the chatos, when you have to spray in the Mizbeach on the outside, Chiser Achas Mimatanas Lo Yasav Klum. If you missed one time, you've done nothing. So I have two options. Regarding the chatas, I could either compare it to the other karbanis that are brought on the outside Mizbeach, or I could compare it to the chatas that's brought on the Mizbeach HaPnimi on the inside. So the Brisa goes on to say, how should we compare this? Let's see to which the karban chatas on the outside Mizbeach is more similar to. One way to say this is, dan and chutz michutz. I'll compare the karban chatas that's brought on the outside Mizbeach to other karbanis that are brought on the outside Mizbeach. I'm not going to compare the karban chatas on the outside Mizbeach to the karban chatas that's brought inside. That's already inside, that's different. Or maybe I can say that no, I should compare differently. Don in chatas v'dalet karnais, I compare the karban chatas that's brought on the outside Mizbeach, and it's a Mizbeach with 4 corners, mechatas va'arba karnais, and I compare it to the chatas that's brought on the inside, that also is on a Mizbeach with 4 corners, v'al yichiach zeh she'en chatas. And Vidalit Karnes, and I'm not going to learn out from this carbon that's not a karban chatos, and it doesn't require that it should be sprayed on the 4 corners, because as I mentioned before, the way this is sprayed is it's really only sprayed on 2 corners, and it gets spread out. You spray it on the corner, and it spreads out to both sides. So maybe I should not compare to the other karbanos that are brought on the outside Mizbeach. So Bekitzer, the point here is, regarding the karban chatos, it's not clear what's the minimum requirement of the blood. Should I say only once, like other karbanos on the outside Mizbeach, or should I compare it to the inside karban chatas, where there every single matana, every time you're supposed to spray is ma'akiv? So therefore, Talmud Laimar, the pasuk says v'chiper, v'chiper, v'chiper. It says the 3 times of v'chiper mipnei hadin. Because of this drasha that we just explained, that it's not clear what to compare it to, so the Torah is telling you clearly here with these extra times v'chiper, and it tells you. The first extra time of a chipper is saying that it's going to atone for, even if you minimize from the 4 times, you go down to 3, it'll atone for. Then the Torah wrote again an extra v'chiper, that it'll atone for, even if you minimize 2 and you only spray 2, it'll atone for. And then it wrote a 3rd time kippur to say kippur that it'll atone for, even if you only sprayed 1 time. This was the source of Beis Hillel to say that even by the karban chatas, even just 1 time, it would atone for. You don't need 2 times, like Beis Shammai said. Okay, so the point that the Gemara is trying to say is that Beis Hillel does not disagree with Beis Shammai to the concept of yesh eim lemikra, that we do follow the pronunciation of the word. Now, Rab Shimon regarding Rab Shimon and Rabbanan, regarding how many walls you need for a sukkah, does it have to be 2 and a tefach of the 3rd wall, or 3 and a tefach of the 4th wall? So the Gemara says, Baha pligi. The Rabbanan argue as follows. Going back to the psukim that it says, Basukais, Basukais, Basukais. So everybody agrees that you have over here really a source for 6 walls, because you go by the way it's pronounced. So it's with the plural term, so it's really 6 walls. Now you take off 1. The first word basukah is that you take out, because that we don't darshan. That goes on the mitzvah itself. So we're left with another 2 times that it says basukais, which is 4 walls. So now what is the argument here? Rab Shimon says you have to deduct 1 more time. Why? Rab Shimon says that schacha loy boikra. We don't need a pasuk to teach us about the mitzvah of the schach. So because you don't need a pasuk for the schach, so you're left with 4 terminologies in the Torah for sukkah. Basukah is twice plural term. That means 4 walls. And then the halacha l'Moshe Misinai comes and says that the 4th wall could just be a tefach. However, the Rabbanan say you have to deduct 1 more, because schacha boikra. We do need a pasuk for the schach, to say that you have to put up schach. We don't understand that on our own. So because of that, you have to deduct 1 more time. So therefore, you're left only with 3 expressions in the Torah for the walls. And therefore, regarding these 3 walls, Allah Moshe Mishneh says 2 walls and a tefach. Now the last thing the Gemara explains, Rabbi Kiva and the Rabbanan that we brought before that were arguing regarding the revius of a blood from a person that's dead, whether it could be from two bodies together combined or from one. So what is their argument about? What they're arguing is, Rabbi Kiva says, nafshois party. Nafshois, you pronounce it in the plural, so it means even the blood from two bodies that will be metame. Tarti mashmatz, from two. Rabbanan Sabri, however, the Rabbanan don't disagree with this. They also learn that nafshois has to be pronounced lashon rabim. But they say nafshois the alma mashma. Nafshois means if anybody dies. It's not coming to say here right now that there's two people that are dead and there's blood from two bodies together. It's just saying when anybody dies, so then the blood of one body, which is a revius dam, will be metame. So what's the conclusion of the Gemara according to what it's saying till here? Right now, the Gemara is trying to argue that everybody agrees the way you darshan the psukim of the Torah is by Yeshem Lemikra, by the way the words are pronounced. Now the Gemara challenges this as well. For the Gemara, is that really true? Or the Kula Alma, does everybody agree that Yeshem Lemikra, that you always darshan the psukim of the Torah by the way it's actually pronounced? But Vatanya, there's a clear brayso regarding tefillin. How do we know that the tefillin shel rosh is supposed to be it's made up of four batim, of four compartments? So the Brayse says, because it says in the Torah, l'teitafos, 3 times. Now, the first 2 times, it says teitafos without a vav. So that's 1, and then the third time it says teitafos with a vav, so that's 2. So arei kan arba. That's why I know that it has to be 4 compartments. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. That's Rabbi Shmuel's opinion. Rabbi Kiva says, Ein et tzarech. You don't have to learn out from the repetition of the words, because what I say is tait bekasvi shtayim. The word tait in this place, kasvi, in a certain language, means 2. And then when it says fois, ba'afriki shtayim, in Africa, it also means 2. So from here I know that it means 4 compartments. So what do you see here in this brayse? Yeah, Rashi brings that in the Chumash, right? But you see here in this brayse clearly that the Tanakama here says that from where do I know 4 compartments? Based on l'teitafos, and he's following the way it's written, that the first 2 times are written without a vav. That's how you know it's 4. So therefore the Gemara goes back and says, Ella, rather we must say, Lo'ilam pligi. I can really tell you, going back to what we said on Amud Aleph, that there is an argument about this, whether you follow the Mikra or the Mesaitis. And over here you see this Tana de Braisa clearly is following the Mesaitis, the way it's written. Now, but however, it depends. When is there an argument about this, whether you follow the way it's written or the way you pronounce it? Ki pligi, heichi, deshani kra me Mesaitis. If the way it's written and the way it's pronounced is different, meaning that it's pronounced as if it's written with a vav, but the way it's actually written, it's missing a vav. So if the pronunciation and the way it's written are actually different, there's a difference in a letter, so then I say that there's a machlokes if I go the way it's written or I go by the way it's pronounced. Aval, but going back to the question that we had before, what was our whole proof that it must be that everybody holds that you go by the pronunciation? The source of basa b'chalav. That it says in the Torah, "Lesavashel gedi b'chalev imai," so it has to be read b'chalev imai as milk and not chalev. So there, the Gemara says, "Aval hai chalev v'chalev," whether you read it as chalev or chalav, milk or chalev, d'chiyah dodininu. Over here, there's no difference in the lettering. It's the same 3 letters. It's just a question of how you read it or how you pronounce it. Over here, everybody agrees, Yashem lemikra, that you follow the way it's actually pronounced. If the Torah omits a letter, then there's an opinion that says, you have to follow the way it's written. But in this case, where there's no omission of a letter, it's the same 3 letters. It's just a question of what's the right pronunciation. Here, everybody will agree that you go by the right pronunciation, which is chala, which means milk. But the Gemara asks on this as well, and this is the last point the Gemara addresses, one more mitzvah here. This is the mitzvah of being oile regel on Yom Tiv. So what's the lashon that the pasuk says when one should come to be oile regel on Yom Tiv? So the pasuk says, shalosh pamim bashana, 3 times a year, yeroeh kol zechochas me'ad Hashem. So the way it's pronounced is yeroeh. Now, v'harei, yeroeh and yireh. Whether you read it yeroeh, which means that you should be seen, and yireh, you could also read it as yireh, that Hashem should see you. D'chiyah dodininu. These are actually 2 ways of reading it that the lettering are the same. There's no omission of a letter over here. Upligi, and we see that there's an argument about this, whether I take into account also the way it's written and the way it's pronounced. As we see this in the Braisa, the Tanya, the Braisa says, Yechanan ben Davoy, Yoim Mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Teimeh, Hasuma ba'achas me'enov. A person that's blind with one eye. A person that's blind does not have the mitzvah to be oile regel, because it says Yerah kol zechorcha. Yerah, so we learn out that only if someone that can see. How about someone that's blind with one eye? So here you have one Tana that says that if you're blind with one eye, patam anariya. You don't have to come to be seen in the Azara. You don't have to be Eile Regel. Why? Shenema, because the pasuk says Yeroeh, but I also read it as Yireh. Yeroeh means you are to be seen, meaning that you should be there to be seen, and then Yireh, the Eibusher sees you, and therefore what I say is I compare the two. What does that mean? Kederech Shabal Lidoi is just like you come to see. Kach Bal Lidoi. So too you should be seen by the Eibusher. Ma Lidoi is B'shtei Einav. Just like when the Eibusher sees you, the Eibusher sees you with two eyes. Rashi here brings the lashon of the pasuk that it says Einei Avaya Lekechaba. The eyes of Hashem are upon the land. It uses the plural term. Hashem sees with two eyes. Af Lerois. So too for you to be seen B'shtei Einav. You only chayiv if you come and you're seeing with two eyes. So what do we see right over here? That according to this Tana, even though you have a word in the pasuk where the way it's written and the way it's pronounced, there's no omission of a letter. But nevertheless, he's saying that you have to darshan the pasuk based on the way it's written that could be pronounced differently than the right pronunciation is. We darshan also the way the letters are written. So we can't say what we said before, that as long as there's no omission of a letter, you go by the pronunciation. So therefore the Gemara concludes that even in such a case, there's also a machlokes, whether you follow the mikra or the mesaidis. So then coming back to the question regarding basa b'cholov, how do we know to read it, l'kula alma, that it's cholov? So elo amar avacha b'rei deravike, over there when it comes to the basa b'cholov, how do we know that it's milk? Because amakra, the expression that the pasuk says, lo sevashal gedi, don't cook the meat in the milk. How do I know it's milk? Because derech bishul asra teira. If it's using the term cooking, so if it would be talking about taking the meat and cooking it together with fats, but there's no milk here, there's no liquid, that's not called cooking. That would be called frying. That's basically you're frying in a pan with the fats. So the Torah wouldn't use the term bishul. Rashi says the term would be tigun. It's frying. The fact that the Torah says bishul, that's how I know that it's milk. That's how I know to read the pasuk chalav or chalei vimai, which is milk.
And then